Wild West environment. In the last lesson, we left ourselves off with the base setup for the gray box. We now have ourselves a reasonable proportional setup of the overall scene. Of course, we don't have any foliage or anything of the sort just yet. We're going to be working with that later down the line. But for now, we have the basis of all the major items set up, which we can now essentially start modeling, doing the fun part, the stuff that really makes it pop instead of just modeling with primitive shapes. So for starters, let's go ahead and start working with this tower over here. It's a very nice and simple tower, and yet it's going to make the overall scene look quite nice. The reason being is that this overall setup, it's going to, well, add the overall silhouette to be looking more interesting. Otherwise, without this water tower, it would just look too flat at the top. Let's go ahead and start working with this. We already had a nice base cylinder, and I think we can start working from this. I was worried a little bit that we might not have enough topology. And you know what? We can actually check the top. I'm going to hide the upper section. We can check the top if it's okay. I'm looking mainly at these points over here, whether or not it's going to be enough. And you know what? Just in case, we are going to bring ourselves a new cylinder just so we could start adding additional detail, and you'll see that we'll add rings around the water tower, and that'll just make the overall setup look well, a little more interesting. But at the same time, all of those this topology is going to be a little bit more visible that you can see at the top. So for that, let's go ahead and select the cylinder. We're going to hit Shift and S, cursor to active. Then we're going to hit Shift and A, make a new cylinder like so. We're going to change this to be 64, so double the scale, double the density. That way we have plenty to work with, just like that. And I'm going to go on to edit mode, select the upper section, go into X-ray, select this middle dot over here, should give us the nice selection. Click GZ and move this upwards. And just to make it nice and simple, I'm going to go off to the X-ray, select the snapping tool with the face selection, GZ, and just snap it right onto the setup. This way we can see that we have two cylinders. Going to turn off the snapping, going to just make sure that the one that we have selected is the higher poly, and going to click H, going to select the lower poly, so this one over here, going to select it, going to click delete, Alt and H, there we go, we got ourselves a nicer base to work with. All right, so the next step is going to be deciding on the rings, the ones that we see over here basically. Let's go ahead and start working with them. We're going to start off by just adding additional topology. Let's go into edit mode, click Ctrl R, and we're going to add two rings actually, like this. So by using our mouse wheel, we can just do that. Left click, right click, and there we go. Number of cuts, 2. And the setup for these is quite alright. Although maybe I want to move them a little bit closer. Yeah, so before doing anything, before adding rings, we're going to click S, Z, and then bring them just a little bit closer like that. That's looking great. We can now, before creating those rings, work on the shape itself. If we have a look at it, it's not directly straight. It does have a little bit of that extra curve going inwards, so it would support the overall weight. Those rings are kind of giving that additional density, kind of bringing everything, this cylinder, this metal sheet together. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and click S, and we're going to use Shift and Z, which is going to scale everything within Y and X axis except for Z axis. You can see it bringing it inwards like so. So that's quite nice because it keeps the same position in regards to the height of the setup. And I think that's a little too much. I'm going to click Ctrl Z and do it again. So Shift and Z, oh sorry, Alt and Z, S, Shift and Z, there we go. And just by this amount, 0.95 or close to that value. just a little bit to get a nice shape, which is quite nice. Now we can go ahead and, well, go out of X-ray mode, click Ctrl B, and there we go. We're going to get ourselves extra rings. Going to just click left mouse button. We had, from the steps, we had the previous setup. Let's go ahead and just change the preset to default. And let's go ahead and take off the segments just to be 1. So this way we just have a nice ring going around it. I'm going to also adjust the width a little bit. Let's see from a distance how it looks like. Just a little bit, holding shift. Something like this. That's quite nice. Going to then click E, enter. That's going to give us extrusion. So if we click G, we can see that we made an extrusion. But we don't want this to be just extrusion on its own. We want this to be inflating. So Alt S gives us a nice inflation, as you can see over here, for the thickness of the rings. So let's think about the thickness. Think something like this. It's going to look quite nice, actually. I'm quite happy with this result. Now, in terms of this upper section, let's think a little bit about that. I am worried that, again, it might be too low in topology. So I will make use out of the base of this water tower. I'm going to go into isolation mode, going to select the top section like so, and then click E, enter. Then we're going to click S to scale it outwards, and we're going to get ourselves this kind of a mushroom setup. We can then click E again, or actually let's scale it down a little bit. It's a little too much. There we go, something like that. Let's click E again, scale it outwards like so. Let's go out of isolation mode so we can see where this upper section is. I'm going to take on the snapping tool, GZ, and just drag it to the centerpiece like so. This way I know it's exactly where it needs to be. And we can just readjust it a little bit, this setup. Maybe make this a little bit larger at the bottom. So right now what I did was I simply grabbed the entire edge loop. So whilst holding Alt, I tapped left mouse button and selected this bottom piece, which gives the entire edge selection going across, and we can just readjust the setup. I think that's a little too much. We're not going to go upwards. We're just going to match the overall radius. I think that's quite all right. Before doing anything, I'm going to go ahead and move this mannequin out of the way. I'm going to select everything, and if we have like light sources and whatnot selected, we can hold Control and then drag it across to only have this gray box mesh selected. Then we can organize it a little bit. We can click M, we can create a new selection, new collection that is, and we can call this gray box like so. Let's go ahead and click create. Then I'm going to minimize this and select back onto collection. So whenever now I create a new object, it's going to be created within a collection and not the gray box. We can actually click H to hide out of the way the older parts. And yeah, this is looking like a really nice start. All right, so one thing we should talk about is going to be how this setup is. It's not going to be straight to begin with. Even if it's diagonal, we still need to add a bit of an extra depth. So what we're going to do is we're going to click Ctrl R. We're going to make a single edge loop closer to the top, not the middle. A little bit higher up. There we go. I think it's a little too high up. So we can click G twice and then move it downwards like so to slide it across all of the edges. Then we can click S to scale it outwards just a little bit like so. Now we can click Ctrl B and create a bevel with additional segments. So I'm scrolling upwards my mouse to get this nice, simple type of a shape. So even though it's a very small type of a change, we can still see that we are getting that a bit of an extra curve, which I think is going to look really, really nice. The other thing to consider is going to be this base over here. This is way too sharp. So whilst holding Alt, I'm going to select this entire circle, this entire edge loop, click Ctrl B, and we can play around with the setup, with the shape. I think this is too much. We're going to lower down the segments down to 1. We don't really need too much. Width, we can hold Shift and just get this. There we go, something like so. So not too much, but still quite nice. We can select this entire piece, use Shade Auto Smooth, just so we can see what's going on. And I think this is a very, very nice base. The only thing now that we need to do is really realistically, upper section, we need to make sure it's just not flat. The way we can do that is just select this section, inset another piece, very small one, and just kind of upscale this outwards like so. This way just smooths everything out. And of course, I'm going to move it outwards, upwards that is, so GZ just a little bit, so that shade smooth is going to be able to sort it out. All right, so the final pieces are going to be for these rings over here. So these rings, you can imagine them being two, they can be separate material in comparison to the main cylinder piece for the water tank. So these will be just added on top of it. That's why we don't really need to bevel this edge, but we do need to bevel out these parts over here. And the reason being is that we do want those rings to be smoothed out a little bit. So I'm going to select, holding Alt and Shift, all of those edge rings outside of, well, the rings itself. I'm going to click Ctrl B and then make a small bevel just like that. I think I'm quite happy with this result. All right, so we got ourselves a really nice base setup for the water tank. Now, if we look at it from the texture perspective, we don't really have much. We'll need to work on that. So we can continue on with the setup in the next lesson. Thank you so much for watching, and I will be seeing you in a bit.